Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi, I'm Deanne.
And I'm Philippe.
And welcome to our Lyman book club. We are reading Pawn and Frankincense by Dorothy Dunnett, and we have hit chapters 25, 26, and 27. I'm wearing my morning clothes, and I apologize to you both. I thought the pandemic would be over by the time we got to this.
Hated it. I hated it. I hated it. If I was not in this project with you guys, I would put this book down and never come back to it or read the other two. Like, I'm being completely honest. I would not return to this story. Like, it's, yeah, hated it. So, and I've done that before to books where I'm just like, nope, that was a bridge too far. I'm done. So, yeah, we'll see.
Philippe, how about you?
Oops, was that a garbage can I just tossed the book into?
Yeah.
Silly mistake. Yeah, I feel the same. I don't think I would stop reading them, but I'm angry and hurt and obviously very, very... I mean, our Lyman will never be the same after this. Not like he was the Lyman we met in the first book really anymore, but there's no going back after this. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, we'll talk about it when we get there, even though I don't really want to, but you kind of saw it coming, but it was just horrible anyway. And just like Lyman, who as soon as things happen, he's already forgotten his goal of killing Gabriel is over. Like, I don't even care that Gabriel is dead. I'm glad that Gabriel's dead, but I don't think about that after I read that chapter anymore. So
yeah, like I'm probably gonna cry during this session. Like I finished reading this section this morning, earlier in the day, and I had like this massive headache, and I was just and I literally went and laid down in bed for a couple of hours, and all I had like running through my head was, I top being bad, you know, just like those last lines. Anyway, yeah, that was brutal. Like, that was really, really brutal. And I didn't like it. So.
I don't remember how I responded the first time, except obviously I was super, super upset. Yeah, it's hard to talk about it also without talking about where it's going. But I guess I can say you're right. Lyman isn't going to be the same, and we have to like seriously deal with this for the rest of the books.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hate saying that it was bound to happen because I don't think it was, but Dunnett has been saying throughout this whole book that it might come to a point where Lyman has to make a choice like this in order to stop the dangers of Gabriel. And it did come to that, unfortunately. So
yeah, I just don't like I guess there are things that, you know, fiction can be, and this is a super simplistic way to talk about it, but like fiction can be a mirror or an escape, you know, and it can sort of mirror real life and real events, or be an escape from real life and real events. And obviously that's way too simplistic, but just for argument's sake. And yes, horrible things like this happen, children die, but I don't want to read stories where they do. Like, it's not I just don't. And it's not, even if it's a small part of a story, even if it's, you know. So
it really surprised me that she went there, and I've always wondered why she did. It really shocked me, actually, because I remember I was reading this at the time when Game of Thrones series, Song of Ice and Fire, was really popular, the books. And people were so shocked by the Red Wedding. And I remember people saying like the Lyman books, which were written like, you know, decades before, is even more shocking. And I find this like way more shocking actually. I think the reason she went there, aside from like really wanting to push the characters and the story and like go somewhere very dark, is because of the history, like the fact that Suleiman killed his son, and then there's a reference in here about actually killing his grandson as well, the 4-year-old grandson. I think she was looking at the history, and in all the books she's kind of inspired by the history and incorporates that into the fictional story, and so I think that's why she did this. That's my best guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, you know, you have to come back to the fact that she didn't have to do that. Like, she was the writer, she was making the choices about the story. There are ways to push Lyman's character and have him struggle and be an interesting character and have an interesting story without making those kinds of choices. And I'm like, to me, this felt gratuitous. It felt like gratuitous violence, and it did not feel, I guess in some ways it didn't feel earned to me. Like, it wasn't, I know you said, Philippe, that she was talking about it, but it just really did feel unnecessarily violent. And yeah.
I do think she foreshadowed it a lot. And the tone got increasingly darker and darker and darker. But it's much, much darker than the previous books ever went. So you're not expecting it.
And I think you're right. I think she foreshadowed it. I just don't think she earned it. Like, it wasn't, it's kind of that thing with, I mean, to go back to Game of Thrones and look at like what they did with Khaleesi, they foreshadowed the choices that they made with her character. They did not earn those choices in her character development. Like, her character was not developed to the point to make the choices that she made in the final season, even though those choices were foreshadowed. Like, those are different things. And I think, yes, we had hints that something horrible was going to happen, that choices were made, etc. But it's kind of like, yeah, like if these choices, if I had an inkling that these choices were going to be made by this author, I would not have read this book. Like, it's not, yeah, it's just not the kind of thing I want in my head, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want this living in my head. So there. and perhaps, you know, the next book or even the end of this book will redeem that in some way. But I have a hard time imagining how that will happen. Although Dunnett's a fantastic writer, so maybe she will redeem this in some way. But at the moment, not.
I mean, I don't know how my reaction would be if you had filmed me right after I read this for the first time, because I've had 15 years to get used to it. So I'm not going to have the same reaction as you guys, but I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, want to go on to the chapters?
Let's.
So chapter 25, this is basically, they're sort of captured for a bit and have some discussions. Philippe and Marta have a discussion. And then there's this tribunal section, which was, I thought was really an interesting sort of give and take between Gabriel and Lyman. And then you have the Roxanna section, and that's chapter 25. So let's dive in.
So just very first, I mean, within the first 5 minutes, I was incorrect. Jarrett was captured. I thought that he was free when we talked last week. No, so he's definitely a part of it. So
yeah,
just getting that out of the way.
We're instantly reminded, like on the first page, like, where's Anafrian? So we still don't know where he is. In fact, we still don't know at the end of this section where he is. And it's like, I there's a little bit of me is like, why does everyone keep asking? Like, he shouldn't be like, hello, something's up.
Yeah, I think you know why. Something's up.
Yeah.
And Lyman obviously knows something's up.
Yeah. So
I do like how we start in Lyman's point of view and we get him, we kind of get a little bit of insight into his head as he's having the opium cravings. So we see what it's like from his point of view. And I really like the exchange between Jarrett and Archie, where Jarrett is like, we should have minded our own business. And Archie says, you know, if we'd kept out of it, we wouldn't have been able to live with ourselves.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of setting up like, I mean, they both believe they've lost, but it's like, even if we've lost, at least we tried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it highlights like how honorable Archie is in particular. And I think Jarrett agrees with him. Like, he's just kind of being a little bitter about the fact that they've lost. But I mean, they're both honorable men who, Archie's right, like neither of them would be comfortable if they didn't do everything they can to help. So yeah, it was nice. A nice moment where you see them like, here we are facing the consequences of our choices, but we make the same choices.
Yeah. One thing I really like also in this, in the way she writes this, is the way she just keeps building up this feeling of doom. And it gets kind of heavier and heavier and heavier. And part of the way is like that kind of conversation that they have, which is sort of like assuming that they've lost. But also there's a number of places as we get further along in this chapter and the next ones where characters act in ways that are out of character for them. Lyman himself having, you know, this emotional exchange with Jarrett at one point, and Gabriel having out of character, like emotional reactions where he is starting to lose, and Marta, who's usually so cold, having like human responses. And Archie as well. Like, there's just different points where they all do that. And I feel like that's where, when the characters start doing things that they would never normally do, that's where you start being like, oh, this is like really serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a point, I think it's maybe coming up in the next section, where there's sort of somebody, I think it's Jared, is sort of surprised that they're going into the tribunal, like, and haven't been beaten. And Archie's basically like, oh no, they're not going to do anything now. They're going to torture us later.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, yeah.
There's also, so I guess I'll ask you guys, were you surprised, you kind of guessed it this last time, that Mikal was a double agent?
Yeah, I was not surprised. I was surprised earlier, like last chapter. I was like, wait a second. And I did have a thought, like, maybe he's triple agency, like maybe he's a triple agent here and he's gonna double back. And yeah, so when he did double back, I was like, okay. Yeah.
Yep. I had faith that he was working for Kiaya Khatun and Guzel. Well, they are the same person, but I had faith that she wasn't working with Gabriel, even though it made it sort of seem like they had some sort of dalliance, which of course, they did, but I really wasn't surprised by that. I'm just really pissed off that their plans used so many people in this book. Like, they had to manipulate Lymond and his party into these situations, and we get the outcome that we did. So
the main thing with them that pisses me off is that they brought the children back to make the plan go more smoothly by making it look more real, and they didn't have to bring the children back. Like, the plan probably would have gone off the same way. But just to be extra sure, Mikal and Guzel brought the children back because they like really just didn't care about the children.
Yeah. Like, they absolutely could have had Philippa, Archie, the kids, like, go off. And Gabriel still would have done the exact, you know, like, they still would have done the exact same thing with Lyman and Jarrett. And, yeah.
but the statistical probability of Mikal and Guzel getting out would have been a little lower. So yeah, that's why I'm not the biggest Guzel fan, even though there's lots of people that like her. I'm like, nope, I'll never forget that you brought the children back.
Yeah.
I didn't mind her until now.
Yeah.
Like, I was really hoping that she had some master plan in order to like be the downfall of Gabriel, and she did, but she also doesn't care who gets hurt along the way, which really sucks.
And I mean, maybe she cares a little bit, but she doesn't care enough to actually risk herself in any way, you know, and that's, yeah. I agree 100%.
Not like she stood up and said, let me be one of the chess pieces.
Oh, no way.
Well, yeah, and we still don't know at this point what her real motivation is. Why is she helping Lymond here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it has something to do with defeating Gabriel for some reason, but we don't know why.
I feel like Gabriel getting the power, even at the level he's at, and the possibility that he might grow in his power here in the Ottoman Empire is a direct threat to Dragut. So I think Guzel's working in Dragut's interest to sort of, you know,
maybe
keep his political enemies down.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, her source of power is probably completely wrapped up in his power. So doing everything she can to keep him in power is probably a pretty strong motivation for her. But maybe there's something else that's personal. I kind of hope there is. Just for an, oh, that's interesting sense.
There's also just a nice little bit on 514 that I liked where Marta and Philippe are speculating about Mikal, and Marta mentions the accidents on the boat when Mikal had joined Lymond. But if we in the audience remember back, we may remember the accident started before Mikal got there. So there's a little bit of a hint that he's not the traitor after all.
Yeah, it seems like because of what Mikal does during the chess game and like the whole thing that we learned where he was sort of betraying Lymond, like I think Dunnett is trying to make everybody think that it really was Mikal all along and that nobody else is to blame, which is why I'm sort of bewildered that at the end of the chapters we read today, Onofrian is still just kind of doing his thing. I'm like, come on, people.
Right.
Like there's 2 more chapters that we haven't read yet, and I really want him to get his.
Yeah.
Onofrian.
Like, I understand. I mean, obviously Lyman is not, like, he's completely overwhelmed emotionally and is not thinking strategically at the end of this section, for sure. But it's still surprising that it's like nobody's going to denounce Onofrian for anything or like ask him any questions or like, dude, where were you? Like, none of that.
I mean, he's probably just waiting till they can get out of Constantinople unharmed because they're still in great danger. They won Roxanna's awful, horrible game. I know it's a horrible way to put it, but like they still know the truth that she conspired to make Suleiman kill his own son and grandchild. So
yeah,
they're a danger to her. So she's going to try and get rid of them.
Yeah. Back to this discussion between Marta and Philippa. I love this bit on 514 where it talks about how Philippa doesn't realize how much she's grown in the last year. And it says she had seen herself in Lyman's eyes as the schoolgirl she had always been, an additional burden to be reassured. She did not see in Marta's quieter mood a somber assessment of what the long imprisonment must have meant and of the kind of spirit which had not only endured it, but built on it. And I just liked that assessment of her and also Lyman's perception of her and Marta's perception of her, or like her thoughts about like, this is what Lyman thinks of me, this, and then her not noticing what Marta thinks of her. So
I think Marta here has a more honest assessment because Lyman just has this blind he sees her as a kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lyman does not see her like for who she is. at all. Like, we even have that whole discussion later about how old she is. It's like, she's 15, 16, 17. Like, who knows?
I also really like the it's like the outsider point of view. You know, we've been with Philippa in her head for so long, seeing her from outside and realizing, you know, this idea, the kind of spirit that endured this and built on it is this incredible bravery and like wisdom in Philippa that was able to get through this and come out better on the other side is like really rare, because I think we were just in it with her and enduring it with her, so we weren't necessarily seeing it that way. And then it's like, oh yeah, you know, like most people would not have dealt with this as gracefully as Philippa did.
Right. And with the incredible practicality that she had, you know, that obviously she gets from Kate and that, but just that she was so pragmatic and, you know, just do the next thing. You know, you could just kind of see her as she went through this entire thing. It was just, okay, what's the next thing? Do the next thing. And she did.
Yeah. I also really love their exchange right after that, where Marta is doing her typical Marta thing of, you know, no one is going to help me. I have to help myself because I don't have anyone in the world. And Philip was like, I would help you.
Because you need help. Like,
and it's sweet. And at first Marta's defensive and says, you know, is it because I look like my brother? And Philippa says, no, because I know what it is to need help. And then Marta like tries to play it cool, but it says in a voice whose coolness and impatience did not ring entirely true. So this Philippa really did get through to Marta, and Marta really did have a genuine emotional reaction under her coldness.
Yeah, which is nice. Yeah, and then just Philippa learning that they're siblings was also a nice moment. Yeah.
And she's so like, again, graceful about it. Like, I didn't know, is Mr. Crawford your brother?
Right. Yeah.
Like she's the last person at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have no idea about this shocking piece of information.
But I feel like this kind of starts this pattern with Marta that goes through all these chapters, where I love Marta so much in these chapters because she is just always there as kind of a quiet support. And a quiet, helpful presence, unlike her kind of pokingly bitter presence that she's been. She kind of like rises, I think, partly in response to Philippa being kind to her. She's in her Marta way, in a distant Marta way, kind to the others.
Yeah. Yep. So then we have the tribunal.
Well, going into the tribunal, there's this little moment where Lyman and Jarrett stop outside, and Lyman says, Jarrett ... and then stopped, his eyes brilliant, his face very white. He said, surely they will let me speak to you both before the end. What is it? Said Jarrett, and took Lyman's wrist. There is time. Tell us now. I can't, said Francis Crawford, an odd note of desperation in his voice. And so whatever he's going to say, he doesn't say it. So I was going to ask you guys, what do you think he was going to say? And what in his behavior triggered Jarrett's thought right after, which was Archie, after all, was a man in his 50s and Lyman was only 26.
I don't know. I put a big bracket around this with question marks. Like, what is this? I mean, it seems to me that whatever it is he wants to say, if he can't say it before the tribunal, it's because he's afraid that Jarrett will give something away during the tribunal. Like, it seems like the only reason he wouldn't tell them something is if either he notices that they're being overheard, like somebody's around, they could hear them, or Jarrett has no poker face. And so whatever it is, Jarrett can't know now. I still have no idea what it is.
We already know that's true about Jarrett, though.
Right, yeah. I mean, he can't keep a secret to save his life. So that seems to be what would be a good motivation for not telling him something, but I don't know.
So I actually had a different interpretation, that it's not anything plot related or secret. It's that Lyman cares very much about Jarrett and is really, really sorry for getting him killed, and really, really grateful he's been there with him, and is having all these emotions, and this is what he thinks is his last time to maybe ever express them. But when he says he can't, it's because, this is what I'm not sure about. It's either because if he was to let those emotions out, he wouldn't be able to stop and he has to like put on his game face and go into this confrontation, or he just literally can't like find the words to communicate those kind of emotions because they're so like unlimed emotions and he doesn't have practice communicating emotions.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first thought, was that he just wanted to say like, I love you guys and I'm sorry you're here, you know? But then it was just, I don't know. Lyman's not stupid. So I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like he's not that emotionally constipated. Like he is definitely, he struggles with emotion, but I feel like if he genuinely thought this was the very last time that he would ever be able to talk to Jared and Archie, that he would actually say something. Like it seems a little beyond the realm of possibility that he would let that opportunity go if he genuinely thought it was the last time. Like, and I wondered, because he says, he's got this odd note of desperation in his voice, and then what he says immediately is, Archie, will this bloody stuff last out the morning, or shall I have to take more in the... So it seems like his mental acuity is concerning him because of the opium. And he's like, Archie, am I going to be like, is this going to last, or am I going to... So I connected something there with like, I can't say anything. And then he's worried he's not going to be able to say anything because of the opium. And then Archie's like, it should last. We've got some. And then that's when Jarrett remembers that Archie's in his 50s and Lyman's 26. But it's connected to that opium thing. So I was like, I don't know.
I took the opium thing as like, Lyman is, he's kind of childlike with Archie in a way. Like Archie's kind of parental toward him. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe Jarrett's picking up on that. And also the way that like, we have this idea of Lyman as like, he knows everything. He's so hyper confident, but he doesn't know how this works at all. Yeah. And I think that's also Jarrett realizing like, oh, Lyman is human and like fragile. Like I think what Jarrett's seeing both with the opium and with the emotional stuff that he couldn't express is Lyman's fragility here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his youth, like his youth, his fragility and his youth are connected. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little ambiguous. I feel like there's many more possible interpretations. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of sequence.
Yeah. I mean, I was waiting because he doesn't seem to tell them anything later. So.
Well, I mean, he's got something else on his mind.
I know.
Maybe he'll tell them in the last 2 chapters, or maybe he'll just...
Or maybe never
show his emotions again.
Yeah.
Or try very hard to keep them buried.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Lyman thing to do.
I guess there's a little bit, and this just goes back to what's going to happen, which I can talk about later, but whatever. There's a little bit of me that's frustrated with Lyman's character growth at this point, because it feels like I want a character to grow, to have like an emotional arc, you know, and to be moving forward. Like, even if that's not realistic, and real people don't always do that, you know, like real people often get stuck in whatever and never grow. But I don't want that in my protagonist. Like I want the protagonist to grow. And it feels like, especially with what happens next, that not only is Lyman not going to grow, he's going to recede. Like he's going to shrink. Like he's going to become more emotionally stunted and more closed off and more like unable to let people in and all of that. And I'm just like, that just feels deeply frustrating to me as a reader. Like that I want him to be moving forward, not moving backward. And I feel like this whole thing is just going to push him backward. Like even before Game of King, like I feel like we're going to go all the way back to like way before any of this. And it just, I don't know. Again, frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if our story is the growth of Lyman's character as like the core of the story, this is the darkest possible moment, which makes sense because we're in book 4, so we have to have like the darkest possible part to then deal with.
I hope it doesn't get darker. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why I really don't want to finish this series, because I'm like, if this is the darkest moment, that's one thing. But if for some reason, like Dunnett decides like, oh, she's got to up herself again, like I cannot handle more dark than this. I can't even handle this dark. Like this is not for me. And so like if the next 2 books end up having stuff in them that is this or worse, like I'm deeply uninterested in finishing this series just because I don't read that.
I remind you that the fandom of this book is like a group of retirees who travel around the world going on adventures. And if it was really that grim dark forever, they probably wouldn't.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they're a bunch of crazy sick people. Like I'm looking at all you in the audience.
Hey. Thanks, Lee.
These opinions are not shared by the rest of us.
I'm just saying, my trustworthiness, like my trust in this is on shaky ground. Like, I have hopes that it'll be better, but I do not actually believe that everyone is sick and twisted. But yeah, I don't know. I'm suspicious that, yeah.
No, I mean, it was pretty bad. I get it.
It was bad.
Okay, so we go into this confrontation with Gabriel, and we have Mikhail with his gold bracelets and everything, which is, I think, you know, there to make us boo hiss at him before we realize
he sold them out for money.
And then I like how she has Gabriel just doing the Gabriel thing, which, to bring politics into it, is Donald Trump thing of just putting the most worst spin on everything and twisting everything. So like the way he says he further abducted the adopted son of Mazik the nightingale dealer, having already seduced him, when of course it's the opposite of what really happened. This guy was using him as a child whore, you know. And just everything in this is Gabriel just twisting everything. And like I like that we get this kind of like last hurrah of how grotesquely awful Gabriel is, just to make sure we can remember how much we hate him.
Yeah, he's terrible. This was a really good scene, actually. I really enjoyed reading this scene. Like just the tension and the back and forth of like the manipulation of the story and who's telling the story, and like Gabriel's telling the story and then Lyman's telling the story, and just that that push-pull back and forth between them, you know, in front of this audience, and they both had to be really aware of like how they're speaking in front of these different, you know, authorities and things. So yeah, I thought it was a really well-crafted scene.
And it's interesting how they're both playing to their audiences. So Gabriel's like, oh, the horror, the children will be taken back to the West, and their souls will be wrenched from paradise and cast into the hell of the heretic. So he's like playing to, you know, his audience, and then like Lyman is playing to Roxanna, and like all this stuff, which when you've been reading the book, you're like, I don't care about Roxanna, but that's what they keep talking about because that's what their audience cares about.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's so it's just so twisted the way he describes like Philippe being in the harem as like a spy to spy on Roxanna, and Marta being in there as like a guise under mending the spinet, you know. And just the way that like all those things are not, like none of those things were done to like spy on Roxanna, but Gabriel finds a way to make it sound bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On 520, there's a line that kind of goes back to that scene we were talking about before, where we're like, what was going on with Lymond, where we're in Jarrett's point of view, and he's looking at Lymond. He looked, Jarrett thought, undisturbed and quite self-sufficient, with no hint of the horror which had washed over him briefly before he came out. So Jarrett sees that scene as Lyman being overcome with horror, which is maybe a hint about what he was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was something like, we're all going to die, I'm so sorry, or what.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Jarrett.
521 also has, I think, a moment that is telling about Gabriel in these scenes where Lyman sort of challenges him, and Jarrett thinks he is not often crossed these days. And it's like, sort of this whole sequence is like Gabriel has gotten so arrogant because he's gotten away with so much and he hasn't had anyone to challenge him, that the reason he gets taken down is that arrogance. He's like just gotten used to being able to do whatever he wants, and that's his downfall.
Yeah. I love this bit on 521 where Gabriel says Gabriel's face did not relax, and then he goes on and says some stuff, and Lyman it says, but said Lyman mildly, I was looking for evidence against you. And so it's just this, like, Gabriel is tense and Lyman is giving this excellent performance of, not that he's unconcerned, but he's just not, his speech is mild, he's doing this thing. And then in the seraglio, all sounds were muted. The buzzing which ran around the chamber was no more than might have come from a nestful of wasps, but there was no doubt of the interest he had stirred. Gabriel rose to his feet, and then he shouts, like Gabriel shouts, insults Lyman, and is like, take him away, and so you just get this really lovely sense of Lyman having the upper hand here.
Yeah. And Gabriel revealing his weakness by trying to end the thing so rapidly. And it's like, now we're all interested. We don't want it to end.
Next time somebody insults me, I'm going to call them dog and progeny of dogs. It's so delicious. And apologies, there's like 15 ambulances and fire trucks just went past my building, so I keep having to mute.
No worries.
I was like, I didn't hear them.
No, because I've been muting myself the whole time.
I think my cats have been eating and meowing in the background.
Very fluffy tail.
I'm just hoping they don't knock the laptop over. So I also love how Gabriel thinks his trump card is Mikal, and he brings out Mikal, and he's like, of whose loyalty there can be no question. And then as soon as like Mikal talks against him, he's like, whore, what does he pay you to lie?
Yeah.
And it's
what
like,
happened to his loyalty of being no question?
Yeah, if he's unquestionable, then that doesn't look good for you, Gabriel.
And he has to bring the Aga Marat into it. Such a low blow, but also very on Gabriel's level.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But also shows that he knows what he's talking about, because he wasn't a part of that at all. So
he must have spies everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. I also really super love Mikal's opening, where he's like, I regret to deny it when Jubail Pasha has paid me so much. But I have to tell the truth,
Like, he bribed me a whole bunch, and I really would like to support him because the money was so great. But unfortunately, I cannot lie.
And he is, as we see throughout, he is very safe with his position with Guzel, and like even to the point where he gets taken out of the chess game. He just kind of like is weirdly floating above this whole thing, and he still kind of creeps me out. Like, he still seems like he didn't really care that much about the children, although he is compassionate at the end, but he helped bring them back. So I don't really think, like, it's not like he's working for Lyman here. He's working for Guzel here.
Yeah, I don't really like him, but I think he's an interesting character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then they get called into Roxanna. Everybody gets dragged in.
Yes, the area that they're in is too public for the accusations they're about to start bandying about.
Truth. Roxanna does not want these rumors spreading.
Nope.
I also really like the characterization of Roxanna, even though she's horrible. This idea that you don't get to this position of incredible power, like basically co-ruling the Ottoman Empire without being ruthless. And so we had this version of her that plays music and laughs and all this stuff, which shows how she, was able to get to her position through like influencing the Sultan, but also that's not like that. There's a core under there that is very, specifically working toward goals in a ruthless way.
Yeah. Yeah. And she does not care about anyone in this situation. So, yeah.
I mean, Roxanna had a really fascinating life. She was taken as a slave, and sent into the seraglio, taken away from her family, and then having like been made the slave, like found a way to rise to the top. So you can see a person who's been through such horrible things is not going to be sentimental about other people suffering. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Yep. Also love how Jarrett doesn't recognize Philippa at first.
Because he's so unobservant. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's both a sign of how much she's changed, but also just Jarrett's powers of observation.
It's a combination of the two, but she really has changed.
Yeah.
And after all the references to her flat chest, gratuitous references, we finally have a reference to her body's new softness. So she hit puberty finally. Go Philippa.
Yeah.
She's old enough.
It's also just her posture, like, because it talks about the way she walks. And so she has just, like, probably she's completely changed her affect, and how she presents her body in the world. And that's interesting, that she has sort of adopted all of that.
Yeah, well, I think we had a reference in the beginning where it was basically like they would basically yell at her every time she walked wrong, and so she just started doing it to like reduce the amount of back talk that she had to come up with like witty rejoinders for. And so, but now it's just like she's just absorbed it and she's moving this graceful way.
Yep. I remember my grandmother always got on me because when a lady walks downstairs, her head should not bounce. So like as you go downstairs, your upper body should be completely smooth and your lower body should go down the steps. And I learned that as like an 8-year-old kid. So, yeah.
Which next time I see you going downstairs.
Well, I don't do it all the time, but yeah, it's like the whole book on your head, and like you have to be able to walk and balance all that stuff. Yeah.
So the two boys come in at this point, and we have Kyreddin's white old man's face, and then we have Kuzum, a round-faced boy, sturdily built with a cap of bright yellow hair. And the first thing he does is call for Philippa.
Baby.
One thing I just find telling in the way she constructs the story and use the words she uses, is she constantly associates Kyreddin with Lyman and Kuzum with Philippa. Mm-hmm. Even in the Kuzum or in the Kyreddin section, it's a reference then to how he recently was playing with shells on a carpet while Francis Crawford lay soft-voiced and motionless, trying to undo the damage which Gabriel had done. So it's like Kyreddin associated with Lyman, Kuzum associated with Philippa. And there's also a bunch of references to like Kyreddin's white face and dark circles under his eyes, and the same with Lyman, his white face and dark circles under his eyes. So we also have these physical descriptions of them, which could just be descriptions of like trauma and suffering, but also again the two of them are associated.
Yeah.
And the word sturdily associated with Kuzum is a Gabriel word, not a Lyman word.
I mean, I think barring any sort of direct information from Dunnett, I feel like we're supposed to know that Corydon is Lyman and why did I blank her name? Thank you, Una. That Corydon is Lyman and Una's son, and Kazum is Gabriel and Julia's son. Like, barring any sort of direct other information, that seems like it seems like going against the text to read it the other way. So
why do you think so?
Because there's too many things that you've brought up that are just connected. I mean, if we read it from a symbolic subtextual sense, like all the, the peach jam and the there's just all this stuff going through. So barring some sort of direct information, textual information, the reading we should do is that Corydon is Lyman's son. And yeah, otherwise we have to go against all that subtextual information, and there's no corresponding other information to flip it. So yeah.
Philippe, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we do unfortunately find out which one is which, but I almost wish that we didn't.
When you say find out, you mean because of the Gaelic?
Yeah, because he speaks Gaelic.
I agree with you both. Oh, go ahead.
That was the worst part of the whole thing. The absolute worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, if things didn't change and the book had to end this way, I would have at least made it unsure. I don't know. Anyway. Yay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
There's a lot of passionate argument in the fandom about which is which, still to this day. So,
I mean, I'm curious what the argument is for the other direction. Like, I can see an argument for we don't know. I can see that being an argument. Like, there's no, or there's little explicit textual information, but we don't seem to have a mountain of subtext for the other way, and we do have a mountain of subtext for this way. So it seems like, I'm curious to know what the argument is on the other side, because it doesn't seem to be supported by the text. So yeah.
go ahead.
I'm curious. I would read an essay about it because I would be curious to see what they would say.
There's a lot of essays.
I'm sure.
Read one.
My honest take, and please don't murder me, to the people watching, is that people just really don't want this to have been Lyman's son, so they're combing the text, trying to find reasons it's not, but they're not really there.
Yeah, whereas I think actually the fact that Lyman chooses him is more evidence that that's his son. Like, I think he chooses to sacrifice his own son. And I feel like that's a Lyman decision. Like, I think that it is the decision that hurts him the most. And I think that we've seen him make decisions that hurt him the most, like that he's willing to make those hard decisions. And yeah.
Well, and very specifically, because we keep having Corydon associated with Lyman and Kuzum associated with Philippa, the choices between hurting himself or hurting Philippa.
Mm-hmm.
And she's given everything for this child, mm-hmm. and he thinks he's going to die anyway. Right. So why would he destroy Philippa's life? And then he's going to die anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And just thinking about like what it would do to Philippa if he'd made the other choice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So. Anyway.
So we have the confrontation with Roxanna. There's a little hint, I think, of the fact that like the whole time they're pretending, Lyman and his group are pretending like Roxanna is innocent, but they know she's not, but they just have to pretend. And I feel like there's a little hint of that in 528 where it says, it's in Jarrett's point of view, and he's like, Lyman's case has a big weakness, which is why would they be searching for evidence of Gabriel's sedition against Roxanna in Roxanna's own rooms? The explanation did not really satisfy Jarrett, but Lyman had looked neither relieved nor concerned. So it's kind of like Jarrett thinks they're really making the argument that they're making on the surface, but what's really going on isn't this genuine argument of Roxanna being innocent. It's more like they're arguing to Roxanna that we're going to say you're innocent and we're going to protect your secrets.
Right. Everybody knows what's going on, but we're not going to tell. Yeah. Yeah. Except Jarrett, who doesn't know what's going on.
As a whole.
As usual.
And then again on 529, we have another one where Gabriel starts to lose it. Gabriel cursed. Jarrett could hear the words in English stream from his lips, words whose meaning he hardly knew, from lips which had gone purple. So again, like Gabriel has lost the experience of being challenged and can't deal with it.
Well, this is when she also reveals herself that she's been sort of standing there the whole time, which obvious. When we went into that room, I was like, oh, it's Gazelle. Duh. Yeah.
Like there's a failed woman. Like, oh yeah.
Who could it be? Yeah. And I super, super love her rejoinders to Gabriel, especially where he's like accusing her of yearning for power, and he goes, "What punishment do these things demand?" She looks at him, her perfect dark eyes astonished. "I have had it," she said, "when you said on your knees, 'Be my bedfellow.'" She's saying she was punished by whatever sexual encounter they had. Yeah. So awful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll this like just telling everyone like he begged her. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have again a single trickle of sweat was running down the splendid framework of Gabriel's face. He's like losing. Like I just love how we're increasingly getting him starting to lose.
He sees that, you know, this is the last nail in his coffin. He knows what's coming. The fact that he's even given a chance to sort of trial by combat that's coming is ridiculous. But
yeah, I mean the fact that Roxanna, like there's no way that Roxanna can let him go at this point. Like he has to die, like just for her power base. So yeah.
I think he's afraid of it, but I don't think he really believes it's going to happen to him. I mean, he thinks.
Well, he probably feels he's invincible, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. I agree. He does, but I don't think that's what's actually happening. Like he's not going to leave this alive, no matter what the outcome of anything is. True. Gabriel's dead at this point because Roxanna can't have him live. But you're right. He doesn't necessarily know that or thinks he can weasel out of it again, as he weasels out of everything.
Yeah. He does have a track record of weaseling out of everything.
Yes.
So also when Guzelle first appears, Marta's face was filled with a strange, contemptuous anger. Any idea why?
Well, it goes back to what we were saying a while ago. Like they know each other from before and have this deep dislike, but I still don't think we've ever figured out what that is or why. So it all goes back to Lyon and the Dame de Jetons and something back there.
I wonder if Martha realizes at this moment that she's been a pawn in this game at this point. And she's like, oh, great. Like I was dragged along on this trip. I really didn't want to come, but good old Uncle Gautier brought me along anyway. And it's probably all the behest of this woman.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
We're going to come back to this.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Marta, like part of her bitterness and issues is that she's always a pawn. Is that, like, I think she's aware of being a pawn. I think she is used by everyone in her life, and she's not, like, she talked before about wanting a home and an identity of her own, and like those are really simple desires and just reflect the idea that she hasn't had an identity or a home, and that she's consistently used by everyone in her life. So yeah, I totally think she feels like a pawn.
Who in this book hasn't been a pawn at some point or another? Seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, guess what?
What's the title of the book?
Pawn in Frankincense.
Oh, it should be pawns. So many pawns.
I think you guys make a really good point though, because Marta and Kyredin are very paralleled actually. Like she's kind of what he could have grown up into if he'd continued on this path. And they're literally, you know, blood relatives. And there's a speech she gives on 533 that's like, you know, don't you recognize yet that this is life? There's hope, and here's brutality to cancel it out. You know, you think we should help one another. Why, when in a twist of an hour, our lives can be turned into ashes through no fault of our own? I told you once, I live for nothing and I hope for nothing. I am not disappointed.
Yeah, I underline that too.
And it's like, this is, I mean, exactly what happens to poor Kyredin. His life gets destroyed through no fault of his own on this whim of this game. So I definitely think they're paralleled, and that the book is kind of exploring, is her philosophy right?
Yeah. I mean, you hear that a lot, you know, like if you don't hope for anything, you're not disappointed, you know, and I always push back against that philosophy, just because it's like hope is what keeps us going, you know, and if our hopes are disappointed, then we deal with that and hope for something else, you know, but just that life is without hope, what's the point, you know? And I feel like that's actually true of Marta, is like, what's the point, you know? She has no hope and she's not living for anything, and so perhaps she's not disappointed, but her life, like, what's the point of her life? And I think that she sees that because she longs for that, you know, identity and home and all of that. So
I think what she doesn't realize is that money isn't going to get her that. It's opening herself up emotionally and trusting people, even though she could be hurt by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then also on the note of people acting out of character, we have Lyman's reaction to knowing about the chess game coming, and he puts his hands over his face and says, "Oh hell, oh bloody, bloody hell," which is not a very Lyman reaction. He's normally so controlled. And then also he's like, "Why the hell did you bring back the children with Mikal?" And he does that a couple times. He's just, you know, like if this whole thing would have been different if they just let the kids go.
Yeah. And I mean, Lyman, I read that sort of like the "oh hell, oh bloody, bloody hell." I read that line as him having a little bit of despair over the fact that this confrontation is going to be about mental acuity, and his mental acuity is not great. And he knows it, like he's well aware of the clock that he's on, and he doesn't know when that clock is going to run out, and you know, or the effect it's having on his mental acuity. And
I mean, she really, the writer really couldn't have made it harder for him. Addicted to opium, it's messing with his head. He's got 2 fewer pieces. He starts second. Like everything is against him in this.
Well, and he can't sacrifice any pieces, and Gabriel can sacrifice all his pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
And if he loses, he's going to lose all his pieces anyway, not just himself.
Exactly.
So, well, this is for when we get to the chess game. So
I do think she set it up that way so the reader can't. It's going to be really hard to blame Lyman for the situation. Like,
oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't blame him at all. Like, I blame Roxanna, like 100%. I think it's her fault. And I don't even blame Gabriel at this point for this, like not for this specific thing. Like I blame him for a lot of things, but yeah, 100%. I think the thing is 100% on Roxanna, and it is her fault that this happened. Yeah.
So. One of the interesting bits with Mikal is that Lymond, I think there's a couple hints that Lymond thought maybe Mikal really did betray them because he broke the plan. He wasn't just bringing the kids back. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the scene where Mikal defends Lyman when he speaks up, Lyman seems to be surprised a bit. Mm-hmm. And then also if you look back at the scene where he betrays them, there's like an initial like, oh, Mikal, how could you betray us? And then there's a moment when Philippa and Kuzum come in, and then there's Lyman's like, Mikal, like super intense. Mm-hmm. So I think there is like going on with him this fear that he has been betrayed and he is just completely and utterly screwed. And then he's surprised and Mikal comes through in the end.
Yeah.
It's always a possibility that your triple agent is actually a quadruple agent. So.
Oh my gosh. Plans within plans within plans.
I'd just like to say, ignoring the outcome of the chess match for just a moment, of course, the final battle between Gabriel and Lyman is a frigging chess game.
Yeah, that was really perfect.
Perfection. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it was really lovely. And like at this point, just narratively at this point in this 6-book series, with all of the chess references that have come and I'm sure are still to come, to have this chess game happen here, and then the consequences of this game, like chess will have so much more weight. Like every chess move that's mentioned from here on out will have so much more weight and be so much heavier, and every single image and symbol and all of that will just be completely different going forward. And that was really brilliant. Yeah.
I actually started watching The Queen's Gambit after I finished this section, so
one
episode left. I hadn't watched it yet. No.
It's good.
Dee, there's a moment at the beginning of this book where you said, Tonight sort of seems to have abandoned the chess metaphor. And I was like, has she?
Oops.
Yeah, no.
So then I also, I really kind of love Jared at the end of this, where he's like, it's kind of typical Jared being a dick. And then he's like, I'm sorry, Francis. I know it was my own bloody fault. You didn't mean the boys and Philippa to be right back, and you didn't mean Martha, blah, blah, blah. And it's like Jared, again, is like reining himself in and being apologetic and being kind. And he consistently throughout all these chapters calls Lyman Francis every time.
Mm-hmm. Like, and then we end with, where's Onofrian?
Yes, where indeed.
Yeah, where indeed.
Where do you think he ran with his tail between his legs because he knew he would probably be up on one side or the other?
Or he's just hiding behind a corner or, whatever. Who knows? Suspicious. Okay.
So you want to move on to chapter 26?
Chapter 26. There's a chess game. It has a horrible ending. That's my summary.
Chapter 27, let's go.
I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I've said what I wanted to say. Like, it was a brilliant chapter in terms of like the tension rising and rising and rising, and she did a really good job. And like the moves, like every move is just, brilliant with the way that the pieces, the people respond to all of that. Yeah, it was great. That's all
I found it very interesting that Marta put Gautier up as a replacement for McCall. And I was wondering if she was expecting Lyman to sort of call her on that and sacrifice Gautier.
I totally thought he was going to die.
he doesn't need, it would be awful for him to lose any of his pieces just because of the death involved. But if any of them were to be lost, I was expecting Gautier.
Yeah, I totally thought he was going to die by the end of the day. I totally thought, like, nope, we're sacrificing him.
Yeah, I was really worried for Archie too. I didn't think in a million years that Marta or Jarrett were in any danger.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't think the children were in any danger either, but
I thought Archie was not going to survive this game. That is genuinely what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I think those are the more obvious choices, like to make the character suffer, but not too much.
Mhm.
So I think also there's a moment when Lyman, he makes Marta the queen, which I like. And then he apologizes to her and he says, you know, you were right to fear and despise us. Man has brought you a death which any woman could have averted. There's no reparation possible for what I have done to you. Which sort of makes me think that what he was going to say to Jarrett and Archie earlier was something similar. And I like Marta. She's like, relieve your conscience of me. You have enough to answer for. So she's like, she's good Marta here with Lyman. She's good with him.
She's so good with the children in this section too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly Philippa, but you know, Marta leaves her square a couple times to, like, you know, help whichever child is closest to her, because Philippa can't be in both places at once. So it's definitely this like softening of this character that we've seen be bitter and harsh throughout most of this book.
Mm-hmm.
I really love her in this.
Mm-hmm.
So then also we have Jarrett's brain cells finally connecting. It came to Jarrett at last that while he himself had been carping and backbiting and quarreling, Francis had been bracing himself slowly and quietly for the most terrible role of his life, the role of God with 7 lives in his hands and 2 of his children. Which is like when we look back at the previous scene, that's actually what was going on with Lyman. And then
When
we
it was like bloody hell, bloody hell.
Yeah. And then, you know, was like dealing with it. And then we also have, this is like the fatal weakness of Gabriel. He's thinking about the game. Jared is thinking about the game, and he thinks, you know, they could rely on one thing absolutely, that under no circumstances whatever would Francis touch his 2 pawns. So it's like the only possible way he could have won was by doing that, and it's kind of set up here.
Yeah.
I also like there's a bit of humor in I think there's humor in this line. Maybe she didn't mean it this way, but we're in Jarrett's point of view, and the game is starting. And Jarrett's mind, once launched on its unaccustomed effort of imagination, tried to follow his thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely some hubris in Gabriel's choice here, because I think he could have won the game outright and beaten Lymond if he wasn't trying to put him in this impossible situation where he had to pick one child or another. So he sacrificed his own life in order to make Lyman make this horrible decision. He just wasn't thinking, you know?
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. I think that's definitely in the subtext, maybe even like clear in the text, is that Gabriel could have won if he let go of his sadism and just took the quickest route to winning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Gabriel, and he's arrogant, and he's sadistic, and he's always going to go above and beyond with the sadism.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, from what little I know of chess, which isn't a lot, there's no way that's not possible, because Lyman was unwilling to sacrifice any of his pieces, and Gabriel's willing to sacrifice all of his pieces. So there's almost no way that it wouldn't have been possible for him to win.
Yeah.
There's actually
right?
I went looking for a chapter or an essay on this specific chapter after I read it to see if anybody had made visual representations of the chess game and the movements, because I play chess and I understand all the movements, but it's very hard to follow in this book. And I think there's a guy that wrote it, a chapter, and maybe we'll link it after this. I'll give you the link. But he said the final move, like there's really no way that positioning ever could have actually come about naturally. So that Dunnett just sort of set it up as like the denouement of this scene. But Yeah.
Yeah, what I've read is the first half of the game is like playable and makes sense, and the second half is playable and makes sense, but the two of them don't connect to each other. So you can't actually play the whole game that way.
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, I'm not going to be bothered by that at all. It's, choice, but
Yeah. There's other things to be bothered about.
yeah, certainly.
I genuinely don't care about the accuracy of the chess moves. Yeah. Although the way that she describes them felt very visceral and accurate, and like you could see a board in your head, and all that happening, which I really liked. So,
and this is another one of those just impeccably cinematic scenes that like you're like, how has this not been in a movie or a TV series or any kind of adaptation yet? So
yeah. Also, I'm sorry to tell you that every time for the rest of your life you see a life-size chess board, you're gonna have a traumatic flashback. Sorry.
God, I can never go to the Ren Fair again.
So there's also, it's at 5:38, and again, we're in Jarrett's mind. The line is, "This was an ultimate trial of every quality all his life Lyman had squandered, of speed and wit and clean objective intelligence. Move by move, his decisions had to be right, for if they were not, no anonymous ally would disappear to lie under some exiguous cross." And Toomey would walk over and kill one of his friends. And if you go back to Queen's Play and the like paralysis he was in Queen's Play, and he like couldn't engage in the world because his deepest fear was that he would get one of his friends killed because of him. This situation is literally his deepest fear manifest in this like microcosm of this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's just his issues made concrete. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like everything about this game is Lyman's issues made concrete, and also like his relationship with Gabriel made concrete, because Gabriel could have killed him at any point earlier on, but didn't, because he wanted him to suffer. And then in the game, Gabriel could have won, but he didn't because he wanted him to suffer.
Yeah.
Do you think, other than the fact that the bishop is, an important piece and he needed him to win the game, do you think there's another reason why Lyman didn't sacrifice Gautier? I'm almost thinking that Marta wanted him to.
I think Gautier was just a distraction. Like he wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah.
I do think Marta, I mean, there's a line about her hating Gautier. I don't know if she wanted him to die, but she definitely didn't want him to be any more free of this than the rest of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been terribly bothered if this was the last we saw of Gautier.
Yeah.
Especially the comment he makes in the next chapter, where I want to pick him up and throw him in the ocean off the boat. But
yeah.
Well, they weren't on the boat, they were in the palace.
I'm still curious though about his story, and like, why does Marta hate him so much, and why, like, it feels like there is something there that we don't know still. So I'm curious about what that is.
I also want to know what her feelings about the Dame de Dutance is, because we really don't know at all yet.
Yeah.
She's definitely embroiled in both of their affairs.
Right, which feels like it's all tied up into the Kiaya Katoom thing too. So all of that is mixed together, and I'm curious about that.
I don't know if we'll get any more Dom, though. She already said she's never going to see Lyman again, so. Unless another character goes to visit her.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't mean we won't find out what's going on.
True.
So.
No. There's a moment on 5:39 where Jarrett talks to Lymond, and it says, "Jarrett thought of Pierre Gilles and what he wanted to say, and moved to touch his silk shoulder. Francis." For a moment, Lyman didn't turn, and when he did, the blue gaze, utterly detached, looked through Jarrett. Jarrett said quickly, "Francis, if there is any doubt at all of the outcome, sacrifice anything and anybody so long as you take Gabriel. Do you understand?" "Of course," said Lymond. I had the moment when I read that, I was like, why is he thinking about Pierre Gilles? But then I remembered how he had that kind of psychological, ethical breakthrough when he was thinking about Gilles, talking about the scale of history and how they have to choose like the greater good for history rather than the individual. Which is actually like the core of this scene, is like the sacrifice for the greater good, and is that the right thing, which I think is a question she's asking and not necessarily answering, because we haven't seen the consequences play out yet.
And I liked Marta in this moment too, where she basically grabs Jarrett and it's like, just leave him alone. Like, it's another sign of Marta being compassionate. Honestly, both toward Lyman and Jarrett. Like, she's not mean to Jarrett in that moment. She's just like, you're not helping.
Marta is this like
Things to think about.
amazing, competent human compassion in a very Marta way throughout this whole sequence. Like, I really kind of love Marta.
Yeah. Yep. More thoughts on?
Let's see. I did like the line about how Lyman's face relaxed as if with the onset of this one cosmic problem, 1,000 others had somehow dissolved, which of course isn't true, but just like the extreme focus in this moment. And then also like another example of characters not acting like themselves, which emphasizes the serious business, is Marta, the proud Marta's knees were shaking as she walked down the straight path towards Gabriel's king. And Jarrett's hands are wet. And like, just like, it's just so scary.
Yeah, when Jarrett has to be in close proximity to Gabriel, he's like, what if I just put this game in forfeit now and like tried to kill him? I don't think he would have been able to, but like, he also would have endangered everybody else on his side. But still, like, who's to have stopped Gabriel from doing the exact same thing? It's
Yeah, the nightmarish way that they just like go right past each other or stand right next to each other. And then we have the most heartbreaking moment to me in like the whole series, which is Lymond comes close with Kyretin, and he's trying to like keep him calm. So he says conversationally, "Hello, a strange game, isn't it? I don't enjoy it much either, but we have to finish it. Then you choose what we play next." And a smile broke over Kyretin's face, a genuine smile, the first one, thought Jarrett, that anyone there had probably seen. Then he said something in a little voice, so much less fluent than Kuzum's, and Lyman said, "Of course your shells are still there. Supper first, and then you shall play with them. Goodbye, I have to move now." Which completely breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Completely. And in so many ways. One, because this genuine smile tells us the potential of this child. Like, there's all these debates about like, Lyman chose this child to die because this child was so screwed up. This child would never have recovered. But I don't think that's true. I think in this moment we see this child could have recovered. And then also just the emotional connection that Lyman has with him, with like promising him the shells, just like he promised, made the vow in St. Giles Cathedral to save him. Mm-hmm. And the way he just can't keep the promise. And it just kills me. So sad.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there's also another hint that this little kid could survive and thrive in the phrase earlier when it talked about Jarrett thinking about Lyman sort of silently sitting with him and attempting to undo the damage that Gabriel had done, and that there's just potential to undo that damage and to give this kid like a place of safety to grow, and he just doesn't get to.
And like, I mean, she just twists the knife. She makes you as the reader really want to see this child recover. And like for me, when I was like, he has to choose, even though of course I didn't want him to choose either one, this was the child that I loved more.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is the child that we I think that as the readers, we empathize with him so much more because we've seen his pain so much more. You know, we've seen his desperate cries for help, and we've seen his like hopelessness, you know, when he knows that no one is going to save him and no one is going to comfort him. And so, yeah, I think through the whole book, we've been led to have empathy for this particular boy.
Yeah, she is a cruel writer. So we have, I'll just go through the things I highlighted. Marta sends Philippa a smile like her brother's, light and cool and encouraging, which I just love. I just love Marta here. I really, really love Marta here. And it's all very, very subtle. It's not super out of character. It's not like she's, you know, giving everybody big hugs and telling them they're wonderful. She's still Marta, but she's got this aspect to her like Lyman has. And it's like, it's just like with Kyreden, when you're starting to see this better side come out, and like with Marta, in response to the kindness Philippa showed her, is showing this kindness now back. So then there's this, there's a number of depictions of Lymond as a machine, which has been a theme in all the books going back to the very beginning. And they happen throughout this section. And there's this part at the top of 545 where it kind of starts, or in Jared's point of view. And it says he had stopped wondering what Lyman felt because he could not conceive him at the moment as flesh and blood. For all of them now, Lyman was only the disembodied voice of a disembodied intellect, the last fate controlling their lives. So this idea of just the intellect only and no emotion, although of course we know that's not true. And then later on we get even more explicit references to him as like mechanical. Mm-hmm. And then the increasing like doom, as it says, like it now became obvious what should have been clear all along, that the handicap for Lyman had always been incredible, and with the pawns now becoming real players, it must now be too great. So it's really scary. She builds up to the sense of doom. We have the moment where where Marta guides Kyreden, which is like, this is her nephew. This is the only time they get to see each other. We have Jarrett watching Lyman as with angry pain a woman might watch her false lover for the first signs of a plague, which is a very, very Jarrett depiction. Okay, and then 547, Lyman's hand closed on his wrist and held it with a pressure which squeezed it bone to bone and muscle to muscle, as if a machine had opened and snapped shut its jaws. So another of the machine references, like Lyman as a machine in this moment. And I think I think he's trying to be a machine. He's got to focus on his intellect. If he lets go, if he lets his emotions take over, he's just gonna like fall on the floor and cry, and they're all gonna lose the game. So like he has to do this, but he's sacrificing the human side of him. And I feel like that's also part of why he makes the choice he makes, because he's cut off his emotions so strongly. He makes the intellectually logical choice, not the emotional choice, because I think emotionally, obviously, he's more connected to the child that he chooses to die.
But I think on the flip side, he makes like the most painful emotional choice, which is not out of character for him, you know? So like, it's not that he makes an unemotional choice, he makes the worst choice and the most painful choice. Yeah.
So then, like, we know things are serious business when we have this line, Archie the phlegmatic, the stoical, said in a high, sudden whisper, oh Christ, the bairns. So again, like by having the characters react in extreme ways, like we feel the extremity of the situation. And then we also have the articulation of what, you know, the ends, do the ends justify the means question on 549. You know, one life to save seven, one life and Gabriel would be dead. So like the whole question is, is this worth it? Not that there's really any other option. And then again, changeless like the machine Jarrett had felt him to be, Lyman turned. But then again, it's very telling. Like Lyman tries again and again. Can we just, like, I won. Can we just do this without the kid dying? Okay, you're going to kill somebody. Why you kill me instead of the kid? And she's like, no.
Roxanna is not having it.
Yeah.
I mean, he really tries like every possible thing. So again, like as a reader, I know people, like, you guys aren't blaming him, but like people do. And I just don't see how you can, because none of this is his fault. And he really nothing else he could do.
Yeah. This is why, to me, in this instance, like, this is 100% Roxanna's fault. Like, it's not even Gabriel's fault. Like, at this point, like the lead up to this is his for sure. But in this moment, the death of Kareddin is because of Roxanna and her choices and her lack of compassion. And yeah, there's no fault in this for Lyman at all. Like,
I also think it's very telling. He even says, I don't know which is my son. It's not until Kareddin speaks Gaelic, I think, that we and Lyman truly believe this is his son. Like, we know because of the structure of the book and like the symbolism of peaches and shells, but like Lyman really doesn't have any possible way of knowing. So until the child speaks, which is after that choice that he makes, he doesn't know that he's sacrificing his son more so than the other child. Which I think is important, because people always say like Lyman chose to sacrifice his own son, but like he really didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he probably felt he chose the one that he felt the most connected to. We have another machine reference. Still as the clock spinneth, thought Jarrett, marking the hours, its case rimmed with spectacular jewels, its inner wheels blindly spinning, awaiting the impersonal touch on the lever to trip it into a mechanical cascade of action. So like this, I sort of think it helps Jarrett deal with the situation by like imagining that Lyman is a machine, but in typical Jarrett form, of course, he's wrong.
Yeah.
I always wondered if the "Say Goodnight to the Dark" line was from poetry, but I've researched it a bit, and it seems to be a Dunnett original that she came up with that. And it's a callback to what Nicole said to Kareddin in the previous scene where we saw the two of them together. And of course, Jarrett watching what happens because he feels like he has to watch and see what Lyman sees, because he loves Lyman. And then this Lyman turning Thanatos of the dark underworld, claiming his chosen, and walk straight to Gabriel. I love the very like mythological. Everything here is super extreme and is like he's the fates and he's the god of death, you know.
And I enjoy that there's absolutely no chance that Gabriel is still alive after this, because I don't want to deal with his bullshit any longer.
You're done.
I mean, if he, like, the price that was paid is too high.
Yeah.
For him to still be alive.
I know.
It's not.
Yeah. Also, I think super telling that at the very end, Gabriel loses his mind and is like babbling gibberish, which we go back to Disorderly Nights. There's a part where Lyman is manipulating him and he's like playing at Gabriel's one fear, which is of his own sanity. Like the only thing he's afraid of is losing his mind, and at the very end he does. And then we have Marta in the most awful moment of Lyman's life being the one to help him out of the room. And again, I love her. Again, she's very pragmatic. She tells Jarrett if he's going to be sick, go outside and come back, but not unkindly. And he says, your cheeks are wet. So Marta has been crying. And yeah, and then there's the moment where Archie tries to take off Lyman's bloody surcoat, and he doesn't understand why, because he wasn't next to the child when the child died. But it's Gabriel's blood. He like already forgot killing Gabriel. All he's thinking about is the child.
Yeah.
And then he can't leave the room without Marta helping him, and he can't even like look. He just like reaches out his hand, and she like takes his hand and supports him to walk. And says, "It's all over now. Leave it. You can change nothing by staying. The moment is past. The chessboard is gone, and the people. You must let me take the room from you too." So again, Marta, like I just love Marta there. Like it's like the worst moment of his whole life. She's there calmly and compassionately supporting him, taking him away from it.
Yeah. Remind her own feelings about, everything that's sort of come before and how she feels towards Lyman. Like she knows this is a moment where he needs something, and she's the one to give it to him. So
yeah, the fact that she focuses his attention on like people still need you, and that's what gets him going.
Yeah,
and
they're not.
Oh, go ahead.
They're not out of the fire yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and she knows the only thing that can keep him going is to feel like he has to protect the others, because he's just going to give up.
Yeah.
And she, because they're so similar, I think she just instinctively understands him and understands that like this is the only way to keep him alive right now.
Right. Like you still have a duty. You still have people to protect. You can't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it's good that Dunnett gives us exactly what's going on in Lyman's head, which is the single lens projecting over and over the death of the child. Like we can extrapolate that anyway, but I guess it's important to have it be explicit. Like this, it has just destroyed him. It's nothing to do with Gabriel or anything else. It's just this.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, thank you for summarizing most of this chapter. I think Dee and I would both agree that it's very difficult for both of us to speak about this right now.
Yeah,
it's still fresh in our minds. So
I'm sorry. I cried my eyes out many times over this chapter. I've just read the books a lot now.
Yeah, it's just we've both been sort of reticent to say anything, and I think it's understandable why. So
don't ever listen to the audiobook of this chapter while drunk. Okay, because
don't ever listen to the audiobook of this
chapter. I don't think I'm ever going to listen to the audiobook of this chapter.
I was listening to the whole series at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was like no, it wasn't the pandemic, it was before, because I'd been out and I came home drunk and was like on this chapter, and it was a really bad idea.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, we've talked over and over about how cinematic this book is. And I think this particular chapter is incredibly cinematic. I mean, the life-size chess and the tension, and like you were saying, like people moving past each other, coming close and moving away, and the chessboard stuff. But I cannot imagine having the end of this chapter or the result of this chapter on screen. Like I can't imagine that in a movie. It would yeah.
And every time people talk about like making it a series, like a TV series or a movie, I think they would change this. Like it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, maybe it would just be done off screen and you would just like see people's reactions, like might be a way to film it, but I can't imagine this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everything up to now, okay, but
we also have a callback to the threat that Gabriel made at the beginning of this book, I think, when they met at Zuara, around the anvil he would sink in his heart. And it says the day appointed had come, and in it he had indeed received, as Gabriel promised, the anvil sunk in his heart.
Yeah.
Gabriel definitely delivers when he threatens you. And I think it's like very, I don't know if it's like dramatic irony or what, the way that Gabriel lost, but he still won.
Right.
His last damnable act.
it's like he lost, but Lyman didn't win. You know?
Yeah, they both lost, pretty much. So then we have the conversation between Marta and Philippa, which sets up the next chapter, where Marta says he will not find it logical to live with what he has done today, and explains that, you know, like basically the only reason he has to live is Philippa and Kuzum. And we have Philippa, who has matured so much, getting it and saying, according to Kate, said the Pearl of Fortune, I am the very nadir of helplessness. So is Kuzum. So she knows she has to play up her helplessness because it is the only thing that's going to keep Lyman going. And then she gets it even more clearly in the next chapter.
Yeah, but I love that juxtaposition of the name, like her name from the Seraglio in that sentence, where the sentence is bookended by, according to Kate, so her mother that she was deeply dependent on, and then her name in the Seraglio, which is the symbol of her competence and endurance and how much she's changed. And then I am like the epitome, the nadir of helplessness, which is deeply untrue. And we've seen throughout this book that she is not helpless, and she really never was.
Mm-mm.
I mean, even when she made like naive decisions or something, like she was never helpless. And yeah, but the thing that Marta says, where he says, or she says, he will measure his life by your helplessness. And that is just a really interesting phrase.
Yeah, and it does lead us to the next chapter, where D, your ship comes true in the worst possible way.
Yeah, D, your ship has sailed. In a way.
Yes. And no. But I mean, clearly this is not over. Like, yeah. So chapter 27, Lyman and Philippa get married. But it's not good. But yeah, this is I absolutely will not say like, oh, I knew it, but yeah, I was unsurprised that we ended up with this. I actually thought what was going to happen was that Lyman was going to have to marry her to get her out of the Seraglio, like back halfway through the book or so. That's where I thought we were going. So I was not surprised that they ended up the end of this book married. I'm also deeply unsurprised that they ended up married, and like that it looks like, I mean, we still have some of the book to go, but that they're going to be married and separate and like unconsummated and like married in name only, not together, that kind of thing. But I feel like we're baby stepping our way towards something.
I mean, if nothing else, they have to deal with this marriage one way or another.
Yeah, right. I really, really, really hope that at some point we get her homecoming to Kate with like, hi mom, I'm married to Lyman and now I have a kid that's not mine. Like,
or Lyman's.
Yeah, or Lyman's. I would very, very much like to see that scene played out on page. But
poor Kate to be like, hi, you're Lyman's mother-in-law.
Yeah, poor Kate. But yeah.
So you got stuff to look forward to. Can't all be doom and darkness forever.
Really? Can it not? I'm suspicious.
I'm interested to see how their relationship is going to bloom. I think it will. I don't think it's going to be a loveless marriage. I think that hopefully Philippa will help pull Lyman out of the dark hole that he's about to be entrenched in for the rest of the series somehow. And just the fact that in this chapter, she basically makes him promise, like, do not do anything that endangers your life. Well, not that. Do not endanger your own life. Like, don't take your own life is what she's saying. And that's her condition for becoming his bride.
Yeah, which was super smart. I mean, that he's not allowed to suicide by act or inaction.
Right. And they're both coming into this contract, this agreement for each other, trying to save the other, which is terribly interesting.
Yeah. I'm still slightly suspicious that we're just going to go down a dark hole and Lyman's going to die in misery at the end of this series, which I would very much, I really don't want to happen. But I mean, I said at the end of the series, I mean, all the way through this book, I've been saying like, all I care about is that these two kids make it to the end of the book. And then that didn't happen. So I'm like,
yeah,
maybe he is going to die miserable and alone at the end of book 6.
If Lyman dies at the end of this series, I am just going to choose to not believe it. So
I'm just going to live on like archive of our own fanfic or something. I'm going to go read Captive Prince. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'll just read that and that'll just be that.
Well, we know he's at least safe for the next book, I hope.
It would be hard to kill him off.
Can't end a 6-book series about a main character with him not making it through. So
he could just die at the end of book 6. And
well, we're not even close to that yet. So
that is not comforting. Okay, so 27. Let's look at it. So basically, we have sort of the aftermath, the fallout of what's happened. They need to there's some pressure to get out of the city in this chapter, because they're definitely still in danger from Roxanna, understandably so. And Lyman convinces Philippa to marry him, and Philippa convinces Lyman to make a vow that he will not suicide. So, thoughts? Well, I do love their conversation. Yeah.
Well, I guess let's go in order. I like the subtle way she tells us that they have Lyman on suicide watch. All his friends are refusing to leave him alone, and we kind of come in this moment where Lyman is arguing with Jarrett to leave him be, but we see that basically Archie and Jarrett will not leave him by himself. He's always got somebody with him. Presumably, I think because Archie is also an insightful person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
We have also another Lyman making a reference to the Odyssey. I don't know what the quote is, but it's got the word Ulysses in it. So it's an Odyssey quote.
Something about have a good voyage.
And
beautiful voyage, something like that.
And I keep meaning to actually like read the Odyssey and look for the bits, because like there's definitely stuff where like they go to the same places and do similar things on them, but whatever. Lyman in this moment is also kind of like weirdly hysterical in a way, and like not hysterical, but he's like babbling, and then that's where Jared's being kind. He says, "Francis, shut up." And then Lyman keeps going, and then that's where Gautier makes the line about why not play chess.
That he is dead. Like, I mean, he's a terrible person, and we knew that all along. He was a terrible person, but holy crap, he's a terrible person. Like,
screw you, Gautier.
Ugh, that comment. I wanted to kill him myself.
Yeah, I did love Archie's response where he just grabbed him, and I love it. Wrenched him to his feet with arms accustomed to tigers, and then threw him out of the room. Like,
then we also have Jared asking if anyone has money, and Philippa thinks about the diamonds that they left with Roxanna that bought them nothing. So just this like, Lyman gave this massive fortune. He gave so much. He gave everything, and yet couldn't save this child. And Lyman apologizes to Philippa. Temperament, I'm sorry. I think he does apologize to several people throughout these chapters, which is a little bit of out of character behavior in a good way.
Yeah.
And this is where they have that conversation, and he said he's surprised when she asks if she can stay with Kazum, and he's like, but he's yours, of course, for as long as you want him. He doesn't think of this one as his child, just very clearly.
Yeah, I love this bit where he's trying to explain to her like why there's a problem, and he says, once what I'm trying to point out is that once you are home, you will find to some people innocence doesn't exist side by side with experience. And I just think that's an incredibly true statement today. I mean, even today, it was true in the 1500s, it's true today, that innocence is perceived to also be ignorance, and that if you know about something or have experienced something, then you are no longer innocent, and that there's this weird fetishization of ignorance and innocence that people still have, and Philippa will suffer from that if she's not married when she returns.
Well, yeah, and this just assumption and attribution of culpability, or if you have experienced something, you must be experienced, you must know and be in control and all these things, where like you may have experienced something and still just, you know, not know what you're doing or not know how to deal with it.
Right. Or that there is that like the experience, whether or not you are responsible for your experience, you are at fault for your experience in the eyes of others, and that there's for lack of a better word, there's a sin attached to knowledge and experience. But yeah.
I also like Philippa's, it seems such an extraordinary thing for him to be concerned about that Philippa stared at him owlishly while she considered the matter. Like, this is so beyond anything that she has on her mind. Just like, what?
She's just like, what? And I love this, like, I don't know any gentlemen anyway. She's kind of like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It is true. Like, she is, even though she's quote unquote experienced, she's been in the seraglio of the Sultan. She's very innocent in the ways of like male hypocrisy and patriarchy, honestly. She's grown up in a little bubble of equality and music and conversation.
And there weren't a lot of men in the seraglio. Like, you know, you have this sense like she's in this harem kind of thing, but she was basically surrounded by women and servants. Like, there were male like eunuchs and servants and stuff, but in terms of like men interacting with her as you know, in some sort of like sexual or, you know, mature way, she didn't have any of that. So,
but also she grew up in this environment where like Gideon was a really cool guy, and
yeah,
and then it was like her and Kate, and they were on a farm, and she played with the farm boys, and she didn't, you know, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, totally. And there was that, who was that servant who went with her when she ran away?
Cheese Wame.
Cheese Wame. Yeah.
Oh, Cheese Wame.
Cheese Wame. Oh,
Cheese Wame and Foggy, her lovely servants. How I miss Foggy.
Oh.
If only she had stuck around, how different this book would have been.
No, Philippa, you are not going in Australia.
I do love that Lyman says, basically you're going to, he's talking about how much he admires her choices, really, like that she was prepared just to sacrifice everything to save this child. You're going to collect your reward in heaven, like, you know, all this. And he says, until that time, as far as I'm able, I intend to see that nothing which has happened to you here interferes with your happiness or prospects. I can't say you're being very helpful. I just love that he's like, I'm going to protect you, damn it, from this, and you're not helping me.
He obviously, of course, he really wants to help her, but he's thinking this is just like a check mark on his like to-do list before he dies. And she's like arguing it, and he's like, "What the hell, man? I'm trying to help you. Just take my help." And I'm like, "Let's move on.
Stop arguing." Yeah. And then she's like, "I have helpful intentions. You know, like I'm not trying to be not helpful." And then she's like, "Actually, the Kislar Aga is the man for those assurances. Do you think he would give me a written guarantee dated tomorrow?" It's just like, you're like, "Oh, Philippa, that's not gonna work." Like,
so cute though.
And he's so incredulous. He just says, Philippa? Like, he's kind of like, no.
Well, and it's also like, as you mentioned, he doesn't realize the degree she's grown up and is starting to become unequal to him. You know, they have the 15, 16, 17 exchange. And there's also this moment where it says, she had grown, Kate's vicious friend, once so elevated, was taller by little more than a head. So they're starting to be like on the same level metaphorically here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's only a 9-year difference. I thought it was going to be more than that, but it's not.
No. Yes.
17 to 26, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 9. I can do math, I think.
You're correct. Yeah, the nearly 17. I love that when he finally is just like, I'm offering you my name, and she's just like shocked, and she's like, how will that help? Like, how is marrying you gonna get me any out of any hot water? You know.
And at first she's like, no, this is ridiculous. But then I do like that, you know, like, well, basically she's like, let's wait till we get home. And he's like, all right, I have to spell it out to you. I am going to die. And he's so sentimental about it, where he says, there will be no other chance. It may matter to you, and it matters to me not at all.
Yeah.
And he also says, I have no intention of going back to Scotland then or at any time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he does, though.
Yeah, I really hope that's not prophetic, because that would suck.
The Dom did say he's never going to see his brother again.
Yeah, but that's not Richard. That's some other brother.
I think that
he has to see Richard again. I refuse to believe anything else.
Same. And he's got to have a big showdown with Sibylla about his parentage, and somebody has to come forward about Marta. Like, we got to figure out, like, is Marta Gavin's daughter with some random lady? Is Marta Sibylla's daughter with some random guy that we still haven't figured out yet? Are they half siblings? Are they full siblings? Who's legitimate? Who's not legitimate? Like, we have to have this whole conversation. I'm assuming it's going to happen in Scotland. Maybe it'll happen in France, but.
And we're running out of time. There's only 2 more books.
That's right. We're running out of time. And this feels like a big deal. Like, this feels like a book's worth of information. So, yeah. Probably book 6, I guess, because that would be the last.
Not. So. Just wait till the end to reveal everything.
Yeah. I feel like this is a mystery that's going to drag out. The whole point is he's got to go back, at least in some extent. I do also love at the very end of this that he says, you're exactly like Kate. Like, it's so good.
The letter of the vow is also interesting, that even married to me, you do nothing ever to arrange your own death. So not only like actively killing yourself, but also setting yourself up to die, like explicitly.
Yeah, he cannot take action, nor by inaction allow to happen. Yeah.
I do like that there is a bit of comic relief, which is that Jarrett and Archie go out and buy Rocky. And in the end, all the Rocky Jarrett and Archie brought back was in Jarrett and Archie.
Yeah.
Sounds like them.
I do love Philippa's discovery that Lyman is in fact not a drunk and hasn't had a drink in an awful long time. It's like, wait, it was Jarrett on the boat? And all of these other things. I was like, yes, Philippa.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning.
Yeah, and I love this whole interchange they have about sleeping on the bed. And like, Lyman's cold and the quilt belongs on the bed.
I was gonna say, like, when we talk about tropes, this is like a huge AO3 tag. Like, there's only one bed.
There's only one bed. There's only one hotel room, and it only has one bed.
Oh no, I guess we have to share.
Thousands of fanfics are built on that trope. Yeah.
Other than, Dunnett being Dunnett, she makes it like the darkest version, with the nightmares and everything. But it is exactly that trope, frightening that fate should so turn that Frances Crawford of Lymond, the source of her earliest terror, the hated intruder in her mother's calm house, should be here alone and asleep in her bed. Like, that is a trope.
Mm-hmm. And yet she flips it where like they don't have sex, they don't turn to each other. It's like they don't like wake up in the middle of the night and one of them's draped over the other one, or in a sexy way. Like none of that happens. And so it's the trope, but not the trope.
So we do
like get sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I said we do get some very interesting sleep mutterings from Lyman though. Which I would love to discuss.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the whole setup is to have Philippa hear these things that he says. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think they mean?
Well, tell me, I can't understand. Why did you do it? Is he talking to himself about the decision he just made? Is he talking to Sibylla because he knows that she was, not as faithful as he thinks she was because Marta is around? Or is he talking to somebody completely different? I think it could be either of those things or more.
Well, and right after that, he says,
"Poor Eloise."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I took it like if you had to make me pick someone, I would say that he's talking to his mother. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's necessarily what's happening. It's just if I had to choose one person that he's speaking to in his sleep, then I think it's Sibylla, but it could be somebody else. I don't know.
Or he could still be talking to himself about the initial decision where Eloise ended up dying and he still blames himself.
Maybe. I mean, that phrase that another time he said only, "Oh Mill, what hast thou ground?" And it's so sad, like just that idea, like he's ground up and so many people are ground up. And
I think also when he says, "Why did you do it?" and then poor Eloise, I agree there's multiple interpretations and he could be talking to Sibylla. He could also be thinking about the idea that he believed in Game of Kings, he believed he killed his sister, and now he believes he killed his son, so that he's like drawing the correlation between the two.
Yeah, this is not an unfamiliar guilt for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is like why this scene is so horrifying and powerful, is it's like the concentrated epitome of every single trauma he's ever had, like believing he killed his sister, believing he gets people killed because of his choices, and like it all comes together in that scene.
Yeah, and then just that continuing just his horror, like when he wakes up. And in that second, he became thoroughly awake, aware of the flurry of movement and of her alarm. And he said, "What have I done?" Again, in italics, which I think always brings out, like when something's written in italics, it's like an intense emotional phrase. So he's horrified. And as confused and distressed, she did not at once speak. He said wearily, "Oh my God." Like, obviously he thinks he's assaulted her in the night and is just weird, like horrified, and then sort of wearily, like, of course because his self-esteem is so low, and so he's just like, another thing I've done that's horrible. Yeah. And then she's like nothing happened.
So when he says, "I thought it was somebody else," who did he think it was?
I mean, well, the last person that we've seen him in bed with is Una. Well, no, there was the random lady and whatever that was.
Don't forget the Agamorant.
I'm just going to say the Agamorant.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to forget. Oh. You're right.
That could be why he recoiled, because it's the last person he's been in bed with.
You're right.
It's also like she hears him draw in a breath, and then again, and knew by the sound what he was trying to subdue. She lay back, tears running down her face, and covered her ears with her hands. So he's sobbing, and it's so upsetting for her that she covers her ears to try not to hear it. And then he begs her to release him from the promise. So I think we get like super explicitly what was implicit, which is like he was going to kill himself. The only reason he isn't is because of this promise.
Yeah. Yeah. And just this like, Philippa, please let me go, you know, and she's like, no, I can't.
And brave Philippa, man, to like refuse to let him go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then this line about in her diary, no entry ever appeared for that night in which the light-hearted hoyden of Hexham vanished altogether.
And we have more of this like poetry had meaning now that it didn't have before. This idea of this transformative experience and how it's changed all of them and how it's changed Philippa too.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I mean I think the scene was like a setup for her to hear those mysterious lines that we're not sure what they meant, but also for her to see him in this extremely vulnerable state, because now we're left with a place where Philippa knows him better than almost anyone because she's seen this like darkest moment of his life.
Yeah.
And just the added weight of learning all of this the night before they're going to get married. And she's still going to go through with it because she has to. She has a choice in the matter, but it's not a choice she would ever make.
Well, and also she can't make it, like, in addition to the consequences to her own life, if she doesn't make it, if this wedding is the only thing that's holding him to life, then
yes, but you're right with the way you said it. Like they're both doing this for the other. So the next morning we have Lyman's line, those who gather frankincense are dedicated unto divine honors and use no carnal company with any woman. And he's saying like he didn't molest Philippa, right? But then when Lyman, explains, this is why he has to marry her, and Jarrett asks about him, and he says, I shall gather frankincense. What does he mean when he says, I shall gather frankincense?
Say the first line again.
It says, those who gather frankincense are dedicated unto divine honors and use no carnal company with any woman.
I mean, he's implying that that he's celibate and he's going to remain celibate, or, so we shall see.
Well, it makes some sense because how did Kairedin come into the world? After that, would you really be having sex anymore? He also says on 563, my brother has founded the dynasty. So I think he's saying no more kids and nothing that will lead to kids.
Yeah.
Oh, so then he can still have sex with men if he wants.
Right.
Nicole, you still got a chance.
Oh no, that better not happen.
No.
Not after all the shit McCall has put him through.
Maybe Jared will wake up and realize he's in love with Lyman.
Jared's okay. I'd be okay with that.
I think Jarrett might realize it, but I don't think Lyman would go for Jarrett. Lyman is just so beyond him.
That's true.
Okay, so then after that sequence is the one where we have all poetry had meaning and sorrow she had never envisaged.
Yeah.
And I do get that. Like, I feel like for me, as I get older and I go back and look at stories or songs that maybe meant something to me once or maybe didn't mean anything to me once, like the older I get and the different experiences I have, the more I may have a completely different reaction to something because of how I've changed and what I've been through.
It's a super interesting exercise to read a book that you were forced to read in high school by an English teacher as an adult. So like as a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old to go back and read something like The Scarlet Letter or The Great Gatsby or, Shakespeare if you're not into Shakespeare. Just things that you were sort of, someone told you as a teenager, like this is a meaningful book and you should read it, and you hated it. And then to read it as an adult again is deeply interesting because the books are very, very different. I remember when I was forced to read The Scarlet Letter as a junior in high school, which meant I was like 16, 17, and I just hated it. I thought it was incredibly boring. And I think I skipped most of it and, all that. And then, 15, 20 years later, I had to teach it. And it was an incredibly meaningful book. It was totally different and had all of these things to say about self-sacrifice and the patriarchy and the way that women are treated and culture and nature and the nature of humanity. And like all this stuff is buried in this book. And of course, as a teenager, like I was clueless about it. And I think that that's true of poetry, that poetry is just like truth condensed, and young people just, it's hard, it's like pulling teeth to get most, I'm an English teacher by profession, by the way, if the listeners don't know that. But it's like pulling teeth to get adolescents to read poetry most of the time. And I think a large part of it is just, they just haven't lived enough to appreciate the beauty and the pain that comes in a lot of poetry. So some have, like there's some students who adore it and really get into it, but 75% probably don't.
I'm gonna have to go back and reread The Scarlet Letter because I had the same experience you had in high school. I just remember hating it so much.
I hated it so much.
How can you hate Hester Prynne?
Oh, I just thought it was so boring. And part of it was that I didn't understand symbolism very well. Like your brain just doesn't really think abstractly till your mid-20s, or it's hard to think abstractly until your mid-20s. And The Scarlet Letter is just steeped in symbolism. And so it's just like, what the hell? Like the rose bush beside the jail cell, like this is dumb, and later it's not so dumb. So
I will have to go back to that actually. Because I definitely remember symbolism was always the thing that tripped me up. Like straight A's, and I got every question right, and then if there was a symbol, I'd be like, but it could mean anything, And I couldn't. Yeah.
Right, and you can't like, because just not to go out chase a rabbit or anything, but like a lot of cognitive research just shows us that our brain just doesn't think in those abstract ways until we're about like 23 to 26 is like when we start to really be able to think in those ways. And there's always exceptions, of course. So, but in general. So it makes sense that like as a junior, senior in high school, and your English teacher is trying to be like, here's all the symbols. And it's like, why?
I think taking it back to this book also, I think it's why there's so much debate about the children, because if you're reading the symbolism, it's pretty clear. But if you're reading the literal, like who was where when, anything, who knows?
Yeah, gets muddled.
Yeah. But the symbolism is like, I mean, the whole like tromping through apricot jam, like it's.
And the shells, I mean.
Yeah, and the shells, and like Una's being of the sea, and like it's just, when that stuff started to happen, that's when I started to be like, oh, okay, this kid is, like it was obvious. I think towards the beginning, when we first saw Corredin, and Jarrett had that experience with Corredin in the brothel, like there just wasn't enough connected to him, and I didn't want him to be Lyman's kid, so I'm like, no, he's not Lyman's kid, but once that symbolism started to pile up and we started to have this connection to Lyman for Corredin and the connection to Philippa with Kazum and the shells and the jam and all the various other things that happen, it just became super clear.
I think also the parallels with Lyman and Corredin, the fact that Lyman has this abusive sexual relationship with an abusive man, and so does Corredin in the same book, like, speaks for itself.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So we also have this Lyman, face and voice peaceful, a well-governed exercise, except that you could see still about his eyes and his brow the marks of the murderous thing which had touched him when Corredin had died. Which I think you guys already kind of spoke to, is like setting up, we are going to have to deal with this for a long time.
Yeah, it's just this bit about today, perhaps the gate of the dead would perform its true office for a small boy whose heritage no one knew, who had lived in squalor and perished in fright, a sacrifice to diminish the soul, a sacrifice to color all the rest of one's days.
So then we go on, well, actually before the wedding, the return of Onofrian, who kind of strolls up. Like, hey
guys, here I am.
Oh yes, I'm back. Didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything.
What? I love it that it says Onofrian the Unregarded. It's like, really? I've been regarding him.
Not mad that you killed my master or anything.
Yeah.
And then we have this whole sequence where Philippa remembers the wedding in Greece, and like how she felt kind of bad for them, and now how she's remembering sunshine and dancing, and the blushing bride receiving gifts and the music and the poetry, and there's just sort of this feeling of like she never realized that this might be something she wanted, and now it's something she'll never have. She'll never have romance and a joyous wedding and any of those things. And the way that, like, being the mature Philippa that she is, she let her mind go just so far, and then with gentle hands closed the door she had opened.
Yeah, and then and then you get this slight reference to her dad, where it says like, no jewelry but the small silver brooch long ago bought by her father. Philippa walked with Onofrian to the place of her wedding. And it's like, that should have been her father, and sad.
I like the little reminder of Gideon, like Gideon cared about Lyman respected Gideon. It's because Gideon was a really good guy, in part, that Philippa turned out so well. And then she, I like also being Philippa, she thinks logically about it. Like, other people have it worse, and without the dispensations that she has to, like, sleep alone and plan her own destiny. So, like, she can't lose herself in sadness about this, even though it is sort of sad that she doesn't have love, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do love her typical scandalization of priest and secretary and Charlotte's affair. I think I'd like to get drunk.
I think I'd like to get drunk, which seems a completely reasonable response to all of this. Yeah.
And then there's that reveal that it was Jarrett who got drunk on the boat, not Lymond, and that he's been sober for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Which again is just like changing her perception of him. And what did you guys think of his explanation of why he stopped drinking, which is one escapes, but one always has to come back?
I mean, I think it's just the summary of Queen's Play, right? It's just like was his attempt to escape and failure to do so and consequences of the attempt to escape. And
Just made it worse.
yeah.
And same thing with Jolita in Sorely Nights.
It's hard to equate that Lymond with this Lymond. I mean, I know we've seen the whole journey, but it's still so different.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to get a completely different Lyman next book as well. So,
I mean, I love the end of that line too. It's like one escapes, though it always has to come back. I found too, I disliked not being in command of myself. And I just think that's so Lyman, that he is like being drunk makes him weaker and makes him more likely to make decisions he regrets. So he doesn't get drunk.
I definitely I really enjoyed our read of Queen's Play because I think I get more used to this like darker, drearier Lymond, and so Queen's Play was really delightful to read with you guys because it was like, and the whole time I was trying not to be too much, but I was just like, oh, he's so young and innocent.
yeah, we should have known.
We didn't appreciate it when we had it.
He's still,
Okay.
He's still Lymond underneath. All right. Any thoughts on the end as they sneak away?
What are they doing?
It's just a nice setup for whatever comes next. The end of the book. We'll be finished the next time.
Oh my goodness. I am ready and not ready.
So what is left to resolve in this book that you guys want to see resolved?
I want more info about Marta. I don't know if we're going to get at this book or not, but Lyman and her need to have a discussion. They need to hash out some stuff, I think.
I kind of want it to happen in this book though, because I feel like I want it to be more of a thing. Like there's not enough room in this book for them to have the resolution that I want them to have. So I kind of hope it gets pushed off to the next book.
Well, they do have to get out of Constantinople, which is going to be probably harrowing. And Onofrian's still around.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the only loose threads really are getting out of the city, dealing with Onofrian. Is that it?
Opium addiction?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, there's always that.
But I feel like that's going to be a long-term thing. Like, he can't do that fast. So getting out of I feel like it's like getting out of the city and dealing with Onofrian while dealing with an opium withdrawal. And then hopefully he'll have to spend a couple of months dealing with that. So hopefully Archie sticks with him. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's going to separate himself from his little crew as much as possible in the upcoming book and or books.
I'm 100% expecting him to send Philippa and Kazum? Why am I blanking on this kid's name? The other kid, back to Flaws Valley and not go with them. Like I'm totally expecting Philippa and the boy to go off on a ship back to Scotland and for Lyman to be remaining in parts elsewhere. So I don't know where that
I know it's an incredibly difficult thing, but I would love it if Lyman comes to accept Kazum as his own child at some point. As sort of a substitution is not a great word, but
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Happy family, Lyman, Philippa, and Kazum.
Maybe.
Well, I'm even gonna be able to look at that kid.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It would be sort of his ultimate forgiveness of himself, I think, if he is able to get there.
Yeah, that's true.
Why do you think he's gonna separate himself from everyone else?
Well, I mean, it's kind of metaphorical suicide. You know, he can't commit actual suicide, but I mean, I can see him just wanting to serve penance for all of his imagined ill, the way that he's failed, in his own mind, he's completely failed. And so the consequence of that failure can't be going home and, embraced by the bosom of his mother. Like, so
Yeah.
I can see him just kind of setting out in permanent exile, or intending to set out in permanent exile, whether that remains or not.
He just needs room to process his tragedy. And I don't think he feels he'll be able to do that with the others about. And once he sends them all back to Scotland or wherever, I don't think he's going to feel responsible for them, so he can focus on his own incredibly deep tragedy.
But do you think, I don't think he's going to try and process. I don't think that's where he is at all. I don't think his mind is like, I'm going to process and work through this. Like, I think he's just miserable, and he's going to be just wallowing in utter misery with no anticipation of healing.
I mean, you're right that he's not there yet, and it's going to take him a while to even get to that point. But I hope that he does.
I don't think he's going to get there on his own. I think somebody's going to have to come along and force him to deal with stuff, or force him to heal. Maybe Philippa.
They are married.
I know. Maybe his mother. But I don't think he's going to be able, maybe Richard. I don't think he's going to be able to get past grief and guilt on his own. I don't even think he's going to try, because I don't think he feels worthy of trying. Like, I think he feels like he should be wallowing in misery and guilt, and that's what he deserves. And so, yeah.
Where is he going to go?
Where hasn't he gone yet? I don't know.
Yeah.
Spain? Italy? No, he was in Italy for a while. Not France.
I mean, they wandered through North Africa. They wandered through the Mediterranean. He could go up to Russia. He could go to like the Eastern European country. I don't know what they were called in the 15th century. There hasn't
been any Germany yet. Let's go to Germany.
Like the Germany, Poland,
or like the
Yugoslavia area. I don't know what it's called back then.
Maybe he'll go to Scandinavia. What's happening in Scandinavia right now?
He could go, I don't know, Switzerland.
Maybe he'll go to the continent. Maybe he'll come visit us in America.
I really do not want him to come to America.
That is the last place I want Lyman to go.
Maybe he's gonna go do something with the Dutch. It's like, was this when the Dutch were? When was like the big tulip thing? That might be an interesting. I can't remember. Is that in the 1500s? I don't know.
I don't know. Mm. He could join De Villiganyan in Brazil.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I don't want to do that either. I want to stay in the whole like Europe, Asia section. Maybe I'll go to China.
Yeah. All right. So we got 2 chapters left. We've got Marta, Onofrian. How are they going to get out? Opium addiction.
Hey, I just married Philippa. Maybe.
What about like Michal? Is he done? Is anything else going to happen?
I don't think he's done, because that was the very end of this chapter. Was Michal. Philippa hears Michal say that phrase. So whatever's going to happen next, he's going to be part of it.
And Gazelle, she'll be a part of it too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, we still don't know her deal.
Yeah.
That's a whole thread too.
Good point. I want more about her and what's happening with good old Kia Khatun.
Yeah, and why the hell was she in Lyon? Like, I'm still very curious about that. So
she's secretly been the Dame de Dutance in disguise this whole time.
Yeah.
Any final questions or hopes for the rest, or venting?
I just want the next 2 chapters to be tragedy free. If anybody dies, let it be Anafrian or Guzel or some other asshole.
The uncle.
Oh, Gautier, yeah.
The uncle. If he dies, I'm fine with that.
Nobody else. Only those 3 are allowed.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing. Oh, the Agamarat. If he comes back, he can die too. Screw him.
For sure. Yeah. No more deaths, please.
Yeah. No more tragedy. And if there is more tragedy in the next 2 books, like to a much lesser extent, please, we've had enough.
I cannot with this.
Yeah, we'll see.
Any, I guess, guesses on the Lymond and Philippa, like what is going to happen with them?
I would like to see them actually enjoy their marriage by the end of the series.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see them having massive problems.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for sure.
I mean, I feel like they got married under duress. I mean, I don't feel that way. They did get married under duress.
Yeah. And they're not like really married in terms of having like a marital relationship. So they don't, like, he still sees her as kind of like a kid. And I think she sees him much more realistically than he sees her at this point. But yeah, I definitely think they're gonna have like 2 books of stress and then hopefully come to some sort of understanding. I would like them to fall in love, which they have not done, so that would be nice.
Yeah, and actually let me ask you, because I asked you this at the beginning, what genre do you think this is? Or is each book a different genre?
I mean, this book was like a quest adventure, for sure.
Oh, do we get romance next? Is that book 5?
Well, I'm just saying, like, Queen's Play was like, what, a spy farce kind of thing almost.
There's a little bit of a mystery as well.
Yeah, definitely a mystery.
Yeah.
Just really.
Oh no, wait, I was thinking of Game of Kings as the mystery.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely the spy farce. Yeah.
Mystery.
Just really nice, I think, is like much more just action with supervillain.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is like, are there any genres we haven't hit that you want to hit?
Horror. No. They're all zombies in the last book.
No. I mean, I wouldn't mind if we had a romance novel, but I don't think that's gonna happen. The tropes of a romance novel just are, I mean, maybe we'll have bits and pieces of that happening, but I doubt we will have like the overarching genre of an entire book be that. I don't know. I'd be interested to see like a caper. That would be fun. Like go steal something, you know?
You know what? I just had another thought.
What?
Now that Gabriel is gone, we need a villain again. So I bet Margaret Lennox is going to come back into the picture at some point.
Right. I forgot about her. That would be interesting.
I wish I had forgotten about her.
But if she comes back as the villain, that means we have to go back to like England, Scotland, France area. Like we can't where she is.
Because we really haven't thought about her in 2 books now. I mean, she's been mentioned every once in a while, but
that's really true.
Some childhood trauma to deal with there.
Now I'm imagining Lyman in the Thomas Crown affair. Like,
I feel like this one was a caper, break into the Seraglios.
Yeah, it was kind of. But I guess I'm really fond of like a good caper movie. So like
that's gonna have to steal the crown jewels.
Yeah, I know. It's like
Mary Queen of Scots
stages, and then you execute the plan, and then it doesn't work, and then there's the hidden plan behind the plan. You know, I love all that stuff. And somebody's got to drive the van. Like, where's the van?
All right. Well, on that note, I need to go see what my cats are knocking over.
Uh-oh, go stop them.
Oh no, yeah. All right, we're done with this section, which is good.
Yes, we got through it. Thank you for bearing with us for this awful, horrible chapter.
More or less intact.
I honestly thought you guys were probably going to cancel, so go to you.
I almost did. I almost was like, I can't talk about this today. We're gonna have to do it later. But then I was just like, no, then I'll just dread the conversation for a week. And I just rather rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with and then never have to talk about it again. Although we're gonna have to talk about it a lot more.
I had a few days to process at least. So like I was really worried about you reading this today and then talking about it. Because I finished this, I think, on Tuesday, but
yeah, he messaged me and I was like, uh-oh.
I was like, God.
Yeah. I woke up with a migraine this morning and then I tried to read the book and I got to that part. And then that's when I messaged you guys and I was like, I have a headache. I can't deal with this anymore. So then I just went to bed for a couple of hours. And then it just like it was just on my mind. And so then I'm like, all right, I can get up, I can finish, and then we can talk about it, and then we don't have to do it anymore. So
we got it over with. All right. And my cat is back, so she's not.
Yay, all right. Nothing knocked over.
All right.
Well, thank you everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye.